What if one life held the power to transform not just our view of history, but also our understanding of compassion, hardship, and divine mission? The life of Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, is often described in grand terms, either with deep respect or sharp criticism, but it's rare to delve into the intimate, defining moments of his human journey as someone chosen by God. Beyond the sermons, proclamations, and battles are moments, some miraculous, others profoundly emotional, that reveal a man navigating fear, love, hope, and the immense burden of revelation. In this video, we're not merely recounting events, we're exploring 10 powerful stories that may challenge your current view of the Prophet. These stories aren't minor details from the past. They're moving, transformative insights into the soul of a man whose life was watched by angels, opposed by enemies, and whose words stirred hearts across social divides, from the poor to the powerful, from believers to skeptics. You'll encounter the Prophet through the eyes of his friends, foes, spirits of another realm, and even through the experience of a horse halted by divine will. These aren't just tales, they're glimpses into the life of a man whose example continues to influence more than 1 billion people around the globe. Whether you are Muslim, exploring the faith, or searching for deeper meaning, what you'll hear could change how you view everything. This isn't simply a timeline, it's a journey that begins in the silence of a cave and rises into the presence of the divine. High above the bustle and idol worship of Mecca, a man sat alone in a cave, surrounded by silence. The air was still, the world hushed, save for his steady breath. He focused his heart on the unseen, the one he believed was always near. Muhammad ibn Abdullah was no stranger to solitude. He often visited the cave of Hira, not to flee life, but to search for something beyond it. In a society drowning in greed and tribal pride, he sought light. One night, everything changed. As he sat in contemplation, something beyond human understanding broke the silence. The cave was suddenly filled with a mighty presence so overwhelming that fear consumed him completely. It was the angel Gabriel, not a dream, not a vision, but a being of divine light and strength. With a voice that echoed the weight of heaven, the angel spoke. "Recite." Terrified, the prophet replied, trembling, "I am not one who recites." But the command was repeated. Finally, Gabriel embraced him tightly and said, "Read in the name of your Lord who created man from a clinging substance. Read, and your Lord is the most generous, who taught by the pen, taught man what he did not know." Surah Al-Alaq, 96, 1-5. These were the first revealed words of the Quran. In that instant, heaven's message was delivered to earth through a man who could neither read nor write, yet was destined to become the greatest conveyor of divine wisdom. Shaken and overwhelmed, Muhammad rushed home to his beloved wife Khadijah. wrap me," he pleaded. She held him, comforted him, and after hearing his experience, believed him without hesitation. She brought him to her wise relative, Waraka ibn Nawfal, who confirmed that the being Muhammad encountered was indeed the same angel who had come to Moses. That night, known as Laylat al-Qadr, the night of power, marked the moment the long silence between humanity and divine guidance ended. It began in the heart of a man simply seeking truth. During a time of tension, when Islam's message was beginning to spread, opposition was fierce. The Quraysh leaders were growing desperate. Though they could no longer ignore Muhammad's message, they still refused to accept it. In mockery, they demanded a miracle. "If you are truly a prophet, split the moon for us." Their demand wasn't sincere, it came from pride, not faith. But the prophet turned to God. That night, the people of Mecca gathered under a clear sky, the full moon bright above them. Then, right before their eyes, the moon split in two. One half appeared on one side of the mountain, the other on the opposite side. Gasps filled the air. Some stepped back in fear, others stood frozen in awe. The prophet pointed and said, "Bear witness. This was no illusion, no trick. The moon had truly split." And yet, rather than believing, many from the Quraysh whispered, "He has cast a spell over us." More skeptical voices added, "Let's wait and hear from travelers. If they saw it too, we'll know it was real." When travelers arrived days later, their accounts matched. They had also seen the moon divide. Still, many chose disbelief, not because the sign was unclear, but because their hearts had already turned away. The Quran later referenced this event. "The hour has drawn near and the moon has split." Yet when they see a sign, they turn away and say, "This is ongoing magic." Surah Al-Qamar 54:1-2. The miracle was real, carved into the night sky, but even such a sign cannot stir a heart that refuses to awaken. In the still deserts where the sky stretched endlessly and the heat danced in waves, a young boy once played among the sand dunes, unaware of his future as God's final messenger. He was just 4 years old, living among the noble Bedouin tribe of Banu Sa'd, known for their pure Arabic and upright nature. Life in the desert was simple, and young Muhammad thrived in its purity and calm. One day, something extraordinary happened. As he played with 2 other boys, the angel Gabriel suddenly appeared. Gently, he laid Muhammad on the ground and performed an act both astonishing and sacred. Gabriel opened the boy's chest without pain or injury, removed his heart, and from it extracted a small black clot. "This was Satan's part in you," he said. Then, using a golden vessel filled with Zamzam water, the angel washed the heart, purifying it completely. He then returned it to Muhammad's chest, closing it as though untouched. The prophet stood, pale and quiet. The other boys, terrified, ran to his foster mother, Halima, shouting, "Muhammad has been killed!" She rushed to him, heart pounding, only to find him safe, calm, yet somehow changed. Years later, the prophet still bore a faint line on his chest. Companions like Anas ibn Malik would recall it, a physical sign of a divine encounter. This was not a dream or a symbol. It was a real event, a spiritual operation to prepare a child's heart for the immense responsibility of carrying divine revelation. Long before he led a community or received scripture, Muhammad was chosen, not just with visions, but with a heart literally made ready for the burden of mercy and guidance. The night air in Mecca was thick with danger. Shadows stretched through the narrow streets, and inside a simple home, the prophet sat quietly, fully aware of the threat closing in. The leaders of the Quraysh had made their choice. This time, it wasn't insults or exile. It was death. Each tribe had sent a warrior. They surrounded his home under cover of darkness, weapons hidden, eyes fixed on the entrance. Their plan, to strike as one so that no single tribe could be blamed. Inside, the prophet remained calm, trusting in God completely. He had made careful preparations for his journey to Medina, where a new chapter was waiting. But first, he had to evade the deadly trap set outside his home. In a moment of deep trust in God, the prophet turned to his young cousin, Ali ibn Abi Talib, asking him to sleep in his bed, wearing the same green cloak he normally used. Without a second thought, Ali agreed, fully aware of the risk, but committed to the mission. Then came a miracle. As the assassins stood waiting, convinced their target was still inside, the prophet calmly opened the door and walked past them. Not a single one noticed. Their eyes were open, their senses alert, yet it was as if an unseen veil had been drawn between them and reality. The Quran would later describe this divine concealment, "And we placed a barrier before them, and a barrier behind them, and we covered them so they could not see." Surah Yasin 36:9. This was not merely an escape, It was a clear message: no plan, no weapon, and no force can harm a soul shielded by God's will. The prophet didn't flee. He walked away from death with serenity, shrouded not in magic, but in divine protection. It was a moment where danger transformed into destiny, all through absolute reliance on the Almighty. The desert sun blazed overhead, its heat punishing and relentless. Dust swirled with each step as the Prophet Muhammad and about 300 of his companions paused at a place called Zarwa. It was time for the afternoon prayer, but a challenge quickly emerged. There was hardly any water. In a land where every drop was life itself, there wasn't enough to perform wudu, the ritual cleansing before prayer. A sense of unease spread through the group. Some scanned the horizon for a spring or well, but the earth remained parched and cracked. Sensing their concern, the Prophet asked for whatever small amount of water they had. A tiny container was brought, far from enough even for a few men, let alone hundreds. But the Prophet, calm and composed, dipped his blessed hands into the water. Then a miracle unfolded. Water began to stream from between his fingers, clear, cool, and abundant, as if a hidden spring had burst forth. Companion after companion came forward, washing themselves, performing ablution. Some stood silently in awe, while others whispered praise and thanks to God. Everyone received what they needed. Not one was left without. This was not a performance to impress. It was an act of divine mercy. Like Moses drawing water from stone or Jesus healing with a touch, this miracle linked Muhammad to the legacy of the prophets, not to prove his might, but to show that God's mercy always meets those who believe. It may have seemed like a small moment in the prophet's life, but for those present, it was unforgettable. A lack turned into abundance, and a need was transformed into a gift from the one who provides without limit. The desert stretched endlessly ahead, its silence broken only by the rhythm of hoofbeats and the whispering wind. The Prophet Muhammad, along with his closest companion Abu Bakr, journeyed toward Medina. This was no ordinary flight. It was a migration commanded by God. But danger followed. Among those pursuing them was Suraka ibn Malik, a skilled tracker and formidable warrior, driven by the reward the Quraysh had promised for capturing the Prophet. Confident in his ability, Suraka spotted two figures in the distance and pushed his horse into a swift gallop. But then, something strange happened. Just as he gained on them, his horse's legs began to sink into the sand, as though the earth itself resisted his pursuit. He dismounted, freed the animal, and tried again. A second time, the horse plunged into the sand, deeper now, held fast as if by unseen hands. Smoke began to rise from the ground beneath. Realization crept into Suraka's heart. This was no ordinary chase. Something divine was at work. Protection, not from men, but from a higher power, surrounded the Prophet. Humbled, Suraka called out, asking for peace. The Prophet turned to him, not with anger but calm, and promised no harm would come to him. In that brief exchange, Suraka's heart began to change. He offered help instead of harm, guidance instead of pursuit. The man he had once hunted showed him mercy, dignity, and something greater than any sword: absolute trust in the divine. Suraka returned to Mecca, not as a captor, but as a man transformed by the truth he had witnessed in the sands of Arabia. Among all the relationships in the Prophet Muhammad's life, one stood out for its warmth, trust, and spiritual connection: his marriage to Aisha bint Abi Bakr. Though often discussed and debated to those who truly knew them, their relationship was one of deep affection, mutual respect, and divine blessing. Aisha was the daughter of Abu Bakr, the Prophet's closest friend and one of the earliest Muslims. Their families were already united in faith and loyalty, but this marriage was destined for more. The Prophet once told Aisha that he had seen her in a vision, presented to him on a green silk cloth by the angel Gabriel, who said, "This is your wife in this life and the next." This was not just a dream. He understood it as a form of revelation. Their marriage would go on to benefit the entire Muslim world. Aisha would become one of Islam's greatest scholars, narrating over 2,000 hadiths and preserving many private details of the Prophet's life: how he worshipped, how he loved, how he dealt with sorrow, and how he led. To the Prophet, she was not just a wife. She was a companion, a student, and someone beloved. When asked who he loved most, he replied instantly, "Aisha." When the companions asked, "And among the men?" he answered, "Her father." Their bond was filled with laughter and learning. They raced each other, joked together, and shared meals. But Aisha also stood beside him during some of the most difficult times of his mission. After his death, she became a guardian of his legacy, teaching and guiding others. Their relationship offered a window into the Prophet's personal world, revealing not just the leader and messenger, but the caring human heart chosen by God. Humanity has long been captivated by what lies beyond our senses, the unseen world of jinn, made from smokeless fire, living among us but hidden from our eyes. These beings, already part of Arabian lore, became real and present during the life of the Prophet Muhammad. One of the most astonishing encounters occurred during the Prophet's Isra and Miraj, his miraculous night journey to Jerusalem and then the heavens. Along this journey, it wasn't only angels and prophets he encountered. At one point, a jinn appeared, carrying a blazing torch, trailing behind him with clear hostility. Every time the Prophet looked back, the jinn was still there, unrelenting. While fear might have overtaken another man, the Prophet remained composed. The angel Gabriel offered protection in the form of a special prayer, a powerful supplication seeking refuge in Allah from all types of harm, from above and below, from seen and unseen threats. As the Prophet recited it, the jinn vanished, the fire died out, and the threat was gone. But that wasn't the only encounter. One night, as the Prophet recited the Quran aloud during his prayer, something unseen unfolded nearby. Unbeknownst to him, a group of jinn had gathered, drawn by the beauty and depth of the words. They listened closely, captivated by the divine message echoing through the stillness. The Quran recounts this in Surah Al-Jinn, where the jinn return to their kind, saying, "Indeed, we have heard a marvelous recitation." They believed and began inviting others to faith. What had once been an unseen, distant realm now became part of the mission. The message of Islam was not confined to human hearts. It was meant for all of creation, both visible and invisible. These moments remind us that the Prophet's reach was not limited by the physical world. His words resonated far beyond cities and deserts, into realms we cannot see. He was not just a messenger to mankind, but to the jinn as well, bringing light to hearts we'll never meet, but which, like ours, long for guidance. The winds of destiny stirred across the barren plains near a place called Badr, where a momentous chapter in Islamic history was about to unfold. The Prophet Muhammad, alongside just over 300 of his followers, faced a formidable force. More than 1,000 Quraysh warriors, well-equipped and thirsting for victory. The Muslims were outmatched in numbers and gear. Most had no armor, some only a single sword, and few horses. But what they lacked in strength, they made up for with unwavering belief. This was never meant to be a battle. Their original intent was to intercept a Quraysh trade caravan, reclaiming goods taken from them unjustly in Mecca. But instead, they encountered the full might of their enemies, determined to crush Islam once and for all. That night, before the battle, the Prophet stood in solitude beneath the stars. Tears flowed as he raised his hands in supplication. O Allah, if this small group is destroyed, there will be none left on earth to worship you." At dawn, the two sides met. The dry earth shook with the charge of men, and the battle began. Though vastly outnumbered, the Muslims fought with hearts full of trust. The Quran later revealed that angels descended from the heavens to support them. Victory did not come from brute strength, but through divine aid and unshakable resolve. In the end, 70 Quraysh were killed, 70 captured, and the rest fled. The Muslims, against every odd, stood triumphant. This was far more than a military success. It was a turning point. The Battle of Badr ignited a flame of hope in the Muslim community. It proved that divine support was real, that faith could overcome might, and that justice, even when outnumbered, could prevail. A moment of fear transformed into strength. Doubt turned into certainty, and a small persecuted group emerged as a united, rising nation built on faith. In the stillness of night, when the world was asleep, the Prophet Muhammad received a call unlike any other. It wasn't a dream, nor a vision. It was a journey that would transcend space and time. This was the night of Isra and Miraj, the miraculous night journey. The Prophet was awakened by the angel Gabriel, who brought with him a celestial creature named Burak, faster than lightning, yet gentle beneath his feet. In a flash, they traveled from the sacred mosque in Mecca to Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem. There, waiting for him, were the great prophets of the past: Abraham, Moses, Jesus, and others. The Prophet Muhammad led them in prayer, silently affirming his place as the final messenger in the divine lineage. Then came the ascent, the Miraj. Layer by layer, he was taken up through the 7 heavens. At each level, he met one of the noble prophets: Adam, Jesus and John, Joseph, Idris, Aaron, Moses, and Abraham. Each welcomed him, each recognized him, each greeted him with peace. As he rose higher, the light grew more brilliant, the peace more profound. Eventually, he reached Sidrat al-Muntaha, the lote tree of the utmost boundary, a place beyond which even Gabriel could not go. From there the prophet continued alone to a realm no being had ever entered. There, in the closest proximity to the divine, he could hear the pens writing the decrees of the universe. And yet, even in that unmatched closeness, his concern was for his people. He was gifted the command of 50 prayers a day, but through his intercession and God's mercy, it was reduced to 5, each still carrying the reward of 50. A gift from the heavens, brought down for humanity, through love, not obligation. He returned to Mecca before dawn. The entire journey took place in a single night. To the disbelievers, it sounded impossible, but to the believers, it was a glimpse of the unseen, a reaffirmation of everything their hearts already knew. And to the prophet, it was both an unimaginable honor and a weighty mission, to carry the light of that night into a world still shrouded in darkness.